has had the most widespread benefit or consequence to working families across the 24th Congressional District, and why?
Which existing labor law?
Which existing labor law do you believe has had the most widespread benefit or consequence?
The most widespread benefit or consequence. Probably NAFTA has had the biggest effect on this district. I mean, I think we've seen, what's happened because of NAFTA, the jobs, GM, Chrysler, all of the manufacturing companies that have left this region for a long time has had a huge impact on the hardworking families of this district, and I think it's had a negative impact. I think that's something that, now we're seeing the argument with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and we're seeing how everybody's looking back to NAFTA, and they're calling it NAFTA on steroids because they know the effect that it had, not only on this district, but also, all across the country. That's something I think we need to make sure we're fighting hard for and we're fighting against, and we're keeping all the jobs in this district that we can to promote hardworking families in this region.
Next goes to Steve.
Well, I don't view NAFTA as a labor law. It's a trade agreement. And I want to talk about labor laws. And that's a good question. The first one that pops in my head is the National Labor Relations Act of 1935, which allowed people to organize unions. That was the genesis of future laws that benefit everybody in this room and beyond. But if I had to pick one labor law that has impacted this district and this country more than any other, and I'm including both people in unions and people out of unions, it's the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. Before that, children could work in factories. Before that, there was no minimum wage. Before that, there was no 40-hour work week. Before that, there was no such thing as overtime, okay? It all comes from the Fair Labor Standard Act of 1938. I work with this statute all the time in defending workers in this district who are getting ripped off. And I'll tell you something else. Corporations try to come up with the most creative ways to avoid the requirements of this statute all the time. We know that they label people as managers when they're not really managers so that they don't have to pay them overtime. They've also come up with this thing called Chinese overtime. It relates to the fluctuating work week so they can avoid paying overtime. And I'd love to tell you more about that, so if you want to talk to me afterwards. But the Fair Labor Standard Act has done more for Americans than any other labor law, and we owe it to unions. And I thank unions for making that happen.
Eric?
Well, yes, the Wagner Act, the National Labor Relations Act, very important, hugely important. It created the capacity to organize, especially in the industrial unions. The Fair Labor Standard Act, Steve covered that very well. I would agree. I would also say that we have other acts that were important, but probably not as important. We have acts that require prevailing wages be paid by the federal government. We have acts that are critical in terms of worker safety acts. The occupational safety issues are huge and are going to be getting huger. So basically, we have a number of very important labor acts that we need to nourish, bring forward, and protect against the onslaught and the ongoing effort to rip them apart. We need to get a full National Labor Relations Board. We now have 4 people. Mr. Obama's opportunity, his nominee was blocked. We need to also deal with our pension theft, private pension theft that's being done. So there are a lot of things that need to be done, but I think I would go with the Fair Labor Standard Act and the Wagner Act, and in a negative sense, as Colleen says, the various partnership acts, NAFTA and TPP, as in a negative sense, having an impact on all of us.
Okay, 1 minute rebuttals. Colleen?
I'm all set, thanks.
Great. Steve?
There's something I'd like to point out, that the battle of labor in America has been going on for over 100 years without stop and continues to this very day. And the second we let our guard down, we will be defeated. You know, we hear about right to work. I hate that phrase because it makes it sound like a positive thing, okay? It's a negative thing. It's a union killer, right? And we know that corporations want to create right to work laws. They tried to do it through the Supreme Court, and this is probably sacrilegious, but because Judge Scalia died in a timely fashion, they failed. Because if he had not died while the Friedrich versus California Teachers Association case was being decided, right to work would exist throughout the land, unions would die. That's a fact, okay? Now, don't think that that's something new.
Steve, thank you. Eric?
We can talk about it more later. This is very interesting stuff.
Eric?
Yes. I would add some things locally. We have the I-81 is going to be brought down. It's going to create tremendous opportunities for jobs. We have to have strong project labor agreements to be sure that those jobs stay in our city and in the region. We're also going to be seeing this discussion around consolidation of the city and the various townships and the county. There's some dangerous things in there. We have to be very aware of, and unions need to be very involved in that discussion as it goes forward, if it goes forward. So we have to be careful on all levels to push things forward. We also have to educate young people about the value of unions, which is one reason I talk about the textbooks that the right wing has a stranglehold on, the social studies textbooks at times that come out of and are tested in Houston, by the way, in Texas. We need to build the idea structure of people in a good sense. Kids need to know how to think about things.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, we're up to our 7th